before this, I was the first employee at an edtech company. The company was built on the idea that for humans to do well today, you need community and mentorship, and you can't just have like standardized courses and curriculums to help you sail through. After that, I worked as a researcher in AI safety and privacy, and now I'm more on the side of institution building and building AI that hopefully sticks.
Okay, my name is Ingrid, and I'm excited to be, I'm also super excited to be on an all-female panel, which is cool, specifically when we talk about AI. I am the Executive Vice President of Data Intelligence and AI Governance at Dow Jones, and some of you might wonder, Dow Jones, why is Dow Jones talking about AI? It's not a tech company. It's also not the index, just to clarify that, because that's normally what people assume. Dow Jones is actually one of the larger media companies in the world. We publish the Wall Street Journal, which is the largest financial newspaper in the US. But we also have a very large B2B business that focuses on financial news, it focuses on risk and compliance, on energy. And as a result of that, we own huge amount of data, but we also actually process and create huge amount of data. So for a very long time, we've been working with data and thinking about, one, how can we protect our own data, but also how can we actually make sure that we process all of that data in a much more efficient way. Part of my role is AI governance, so not only the data side, and we'll talk about that more later, but it's really ensuring that there is a global framework within the company that focuses on AI governance.
Yeah, so we'll definitely get back to that in a second. So thank you all for introducing yourselves. So actually, starting with you, Ingrid, because I know you mentioned something about establishing an AI philosophy. So could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Costa made it somewhat easy for me because it's all centered around the human. One of the things when we first started working with AI, which was over 20 years ago, it was really thinking about what it is, how can we actually help the human as opposed to the other way around. So one of the things we want to make sure is that it's all human-centered. And that has been a long journey, and one of the things that we found is the fact that technology alone is not going to solve the problem. And again, Costin talked about that, but it really is true. And we had this one example where we were working with a great startup company. The technology was amazing, but when we were looking at the results of data that they were processing, it wasn't exactly right. And what it turned out, it was around Russian companies, but what it turned out to be, they were using the wrong input because they did not have the subject matter expertise to really understand where you needed to go to in order to get that correct information. So as a result of that, we had to bring in our own subject matter experts, helping them, working alongside technology. And back at the time, we actually thought about that as authentic intelligence, but it really is understanding that you need the technology, but you also need the human in order to get to really great results.
Yeah, so again, it's like making AI stick. It's not only about technology, but those are also people that have to use that technology, so how to indeed get people to adopt it, right? And Tatiana, so this entire track is actually called Accelerating AI Adoption. So we all here want to learn about how to actually accelerate, so not just scratch the surface, but actually really deliver value with AI. So you have plenty of experience working with customers at Snowflake. So can you also share what sort of challenges do we all need to overcome to actually really adopt it and to really accelerate AI?
Thank you, and I think this is a very important question, and thank you for addressing this matter. So, first of all, adopting AI, especially at scale, it's hard. So that's why maybe we're all here to discuss this topic. But I also want to start by discussing a bit why this is also really important, why this matters a lot. Because it's also about the potential, so that we get a motivation to overcome the challenges. I truly believe, and this is also from my experience discussing with many customers around Europe, that the set of things we can build by combining AI plus people is actually larger, and it can be even more impactful than using that by themselves separately. So I want to say that from the very get-go. And I also look at my personal experience, even preparing for this panel. I got the chance to distill tens of papers. I used AI. For that, it took me minutes as opposed to hours, days, as I was doing the prep in the past. So there's a lot of potential, and I use this also on a daily basis to prep for customer meetings, to code, and so on. And I see the same potential with my customers. So one big, I would say, way of working is to automate these manual tasks. I like to call these the repetitive, boring tasks, but they do have an associated value, and these releases ask people to do more creative, high-value tasks. And some of the success I see with my customers are around customer support, triaging automatically the customer support cases, and being able to prioritize and respond in a timely fashion. And this, in turn, it will increase the customer retention. Or in marketing, it's about hyper-personalization, increasing the customer lifetime value experience. Or maybe in sales, it's about doing this research, as I do on a daily basis, using AI, so that I can free up time and speak with customers and help them in turn realize the value they need with AI. And I know there was a bit of like not so very inspiring, optimistic KPIs that we share during the day. But in our case, with the customers, we are discussing, they see a lot of value. So already 90% of the customers, they see 40% ROI. So basically, these AI projects are paying for themselves. So there's a lot of potential coming. But at the same time, of course, with AI, it has a qualitative shift. It can, as Ingrid mentioned, it can crunch vast amounts of data. It can also maybe solve some of these tasks autonomously. But there's also like a more, it's like a friction, because at the same time, we see these AIs, they hallucinate. At the same time, they act as a black box, or they are non-deterministic, meaning they don't give consistent results. And from this friction, the potential and the way they behave, they work like, we see some emerging questions from the customers, like, can I really trust the data? How can I scale from pilot to production? How can I trust the results? Do I have any control over the outcomes of an agent, of an AI application? So I would say it comes down to these four challenges: governance, data quality, scalability, and trust. And if we don't take these challenges, we are only going to scale CAS when we go into production.
Yeah, so those are valid things to worry about, right? And also valid challenges and barriers that we need to overcome. And this also has to do with the aspect of the human nature, right? Like we all want to have it under control. But when it comes to actually integrating technologies or AI, for example, into the culture aspect. So Varia, could you also explain how to actually help people understand those technologies?
Yeah, absolutely. I think while it's a cliched start, it often comes in the form of education. But here I don't want to just say education very blankly and sort of step away. If you study how education as a system has evolved over the last century, it was built basically to support a particular kind of an industrial age. As you enter a more intelligent age, you need to have systems and processes in education that supports that. And I'll give you a very simple example. There's a fairly popular paper that was written around June, I think, by a few researchers at MIT that looked at it was I think called Brain on GPT, which basically had like 3 groups, and one was students writing the SAT exam pen and paper, one was using Google, and the third was using ChatGPT. And after like 2 different versions of the test, they found that students who used GPT basically had higher cognitive depth. It's very easy to simply say that, oh, the more you use AI, the dumber you're getting. But in reality, the design interface we have through which we engage via GPT and language models in general is not conducive to actually eliciting creative thinking, connecting dots in strange ways. So the challenge right now is we're trying to find solutions in existing frameworks versus we are at a phase where we need to rethink education in a very first principled approach to be like what still remains relevant and what doesn't. There are discussions on specialists versus generalists. There are discussions on who adopts AI in what way, and at an individual level it's easy to do it. So for example, prepping for a panel, doing all of that, you can build co-pilot systems around yourself to do it. But when you look at it at a more institutional level, for example, this lab in particular is based out of the Aditya Birla Group, which is a fairly large Indian conglomerate. And within this, we are a very human resource intensive operations to the extent that any technology, when it's integrated, the first question asked is, who is it replacing and how many people there are. And often what I've found as a solution to this is it's less about replacing, from a business point of view, identifying processes which don't already have human intervention. And I'll tell you a very fun fact. So if you look at the data through all of the Aditya Birla Group, most of it, almost upwards of 80%, is in numeric format. It's either in time series format, it's audio or video data, which can then be condensed into like numeric patterns, which anyway humans cannot infer. So it's not textual data that can be run through a language model and then be used. So a lot of what people talk about when they say incorporating AI, incorporating tech, is actually for systems anyway humans can't do in larger organizations. If it's smaller and leaner teams, yes, you can sort of multiply individual productivity. But when you talk about large institutions, often it's just coordination, which anyway happens in zeros and ones already.
Yeah, so education is key.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And Ingrid, so you mentioned the governance structures, right, when you were introducing yourself. So can you explain a little bit more and how to make AI stick is also through governance, right? So could you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, and I think it's absolutely true. I think it helps. It's not, I think, there's many components to ensure that AI sticks, governance being one of them. When we started thinking about governance, I think the main driver initially was for the fact that, going back to what I mentioned in my introduction, Dow Jones publishes, Wall Street Journal, Barron's Markets Watch, a lot of publications, and in order to ensure that we can continue doing that, in order that we can ensure that we can continue doing journalism, if you want to do really good investigative journalism, it costs a lot of money, right? So in order to do so, to continue doing that, you need to ensure that you protect your content. And I think, so that was the first step. The second step, through one of our B2B businesses, we have a lot of relations with other publishers. And just as we want to protect our content, we want to protect their content as well. So with that, we really thought about how can we do that, and that's how we started thinking about a more broader structure for AI governance. What we did, we actually created an AI steering committee, and you can call it whatever you want to, and there were a few key aspects which I think have made it successful. we kept it very nimble. We didn't want like that by committee and having 25 people at the table, because we wanted to be able to make sure that we could make decisions very quickly. The technology is evolving so rapidly that if you have to have endless discussions, it wasn't really working. We also made sure that within that small group of people, we had every aspect of the business included. So we had someone from the engineering side, someone from the technology AI side, so the machine learning side. We had someone from marketing, we had someone from the newsroom, we had someone from legal. So with all of these people, we actually allowed for fast decision making, thinking about all aspects of the business. And then what we did, we actually shared all of that with employees. So any employee who has an opportunity to use an AI or a Gen AI solution, whether that is building something internally, whether that is using an external tool, they will go through the steering committee, they submit a request, and by doing so, one, we can make sure that it actually coincides, or it follows our principles. We can also make sure that if another department is already using one of those tools, or is already trying to solve the problem, that we can point them into that direction rather than reinventing the wheel. And it's, as I said, it's successful. People are using it, and we so far we've received hundreds of requests to actually allow people to start using AI.
And how long are you doing this already? When did you start setting such tools?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say 2 years ago, roughly.
Yeah. So it's kind of like from the bottom down, right?
Yeah.
Bottom up, sorry, approach.
Yeah. Yes, but then at the same time, it's also important that it's top down, right? Because if the top doesn't support that governance structure, then nobody respects ultimately what's being discussed in the steering committee.
Yeah, makes sense, absolutely. And Tatiana, we also here for the framework, right? And we also want to track, like, you know, yes, we are adopting, we're accelerating, but how can we actually measure, right? And could you also tell us how you do it at Snowflake? So how you actually measure and give us some practical frameworks?
Sure, because we discussed in the beginning about challenges. I want to also move a bit into the solution space. I promised in the beginning to share back some practical lessons, something that you can also apply when you go back home or back to the office. So a framework that we are using, and actually there's going to be a deeper dive tomorrow, I think 12:20, if you want to hear even more about it in the same room. We call this GATE, and actually I was thinking about it yesterday, and I was saying, it's actually a good name. It's like opening the gate to AI adoption in a way. So I really like the acronym. It's an acronym, GATE. And what does GATE stand for? So we here are discussing multiple dimensions. So to adopt AI is more about technology, is more about governance and policies. And whenever I speak with execs, they always tell this, like, governance before technology even. It's like a mantra, I'm hearing it so frequently. So GATE, first of all, GATE is governance and data readiness. And it's something maybe you've heard a lot in the morning. So you have to ask yourself, do I have the governance, the data quality in place? Is my data in a ready? I think this is really, really important. Then A is about agility and scalability. So you have a backlog of use cases. You need to have a way, a set of tools to go to the backlog, prioritize, and then the question is, how do I go from pilot to production? How can I scale? And a really big component of scale is also having a way to integrate with the existing business workflows. Because these AI solutions, they are only going to stick if they are embedded when the business users or the end users are. So in that sense, integration is really important. When it comes to scalability, I'd like to also share 2 concrete examples. One is an internal AI chatbot we are using at Snowflake. It has acquired an NPS score of 90%. 1,000 users are using it. More than 500 questions being asked on a weekly basis. So this is what I am talking about when discussing scale. And then a second example is actually a customer example. Maybe you are familiar, it's close by, Toyota Motor Europe. They are based in Belgium. But they started with a chatbot, and now they scale to a RAG as a service approach. This is a public case. You can Google it after the session. But the idea, they started small, and with a RAG as a service, they were able to scale, and now they have two chatbots that are embedded in Teams, so that everybody at TME can talk about car policies, repair bots, quality bots, and so on. Coming back to the framework, then the T is about talent and support. So we need to address the human factor. And another important component, I would say, is having tools that are easy to use. Not only incorporating the humans in the group, but providing them tools easy to use. So that they can get easily started. And whenever I run customer workshops, for me it's really important for the non-technical people to also get involved. And we can go from data to an agent in 15 minutes, and they can build that themselves, and it's really empowering and powerful. And then the last one is E, and for me it's the most important. It's about evaluation and trust. So remember the questions I mentioned in the beginning, most of them are related to trust. And it's important from the beginning to have at least a minimal evaluation framework. We call that the golden data set, that it's applicable to your data. What I want to mention here is good to have in scope, but also out of the scope questions, so that you can also test for foreseeable misuse of the agents of these AI solutions. And trust, it has many dimensions. I would only want to mention like transparency. So when you are building agents, it's very important to add the citations, the data sources, confidence scores even. Guardians are really important. So it's very important for these AI solutions to also abstain, say I don't know, if they don't know the answer. And of course, the controls in place, human in the loop, human feedback, and even the possibility for the human to accept, reject a step in the workflow. So this would be my recommendation. And the last point I want to make is this AI adoption or AI use cases, these are iterative processes. And companies that are really successful, they start with the small T transformations. This is how I like to call them. Remember the RAG as a service. With the small T, once they get the data foundation, the governance, the security in place, they then have the good foundation to scale and build more.
So GATE, can you repeat again what were the
governance and data readiness, agility and scalability, talent and support, evaluation and trust. GATE. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you so much for that. It's very practical, and I'm sure that everybody has noted down already. So Barry, over to you, because fear of being replaced with AI, right? Like I think it's a valid barrier to adopt and to work with AI. So what does it actually mean to empower humans today, and also from a technical, in a technical context?
No, absolutely. I think a lot of what AI allows you to do is just more with little, and the way you can think about it is that historically, even if you look at it from a business point of view and having, say, a source of monetization, you would basically pick one and go deeper on it, versus today you can explore multiple. And you can look at it basically through 3 lenses. So one, it allows you for a lot more speed in doing and testing, and a lot of it is just iterative. 2, it allows you for measuring returns in a more specific way. The more you experiment, the more you can sort of see what works and what doesn't. And in a way, have a more diversified way of approaching things. And third is scale. You could today run a 3-people team and be making billions of dollars, or or you can run a team with 300 people making maybe $500,000. So really, I think it comes down to basically being able to augment very little with a very uncertain and dynamic environment. So it's almost like surfing, right? Like you have to sort of catch multiple waves. Those waves keep going up and down. You basically have to make sure you do it, and the AI is sort of your surfboard. It's a bad metaphor and analogy, but the point being that I don't think it fundamentally changes how business is done, how value is created, and what humans are capable of. It just either helps you do it quite quickly, it helps you either do it in a more diversified way, or helps you do it in a way that's that can reach more people quickly.
Great. So as a kind of last question for all of you, so if you could only change one thing about how organizations approach AI adoption, what will create the biggest behavioral shift? Who wants to take this one first?
I'm happy to go first. I think, because I've been thinking about this question, because I think it's an interesting one. I think I saw a recent study, which I think was by MIT as well, that said that 95% of the AI projects at large companies fail due to lack of ROI. That's a huge percentage. And what I think, if I could change one thing, is maybe rather than focusing on super large projects, actually allow all of your employees to start experimenting with AI. Give them proper tools, give them proper guardrails, give them proper guidelines, and just let them play with it. Because I think that is how you make them comfortable. So talking about fear, how do you take away that fear? But also, by starting small, you can get to something big rather than trying to start with something really big. That would be my one thing.
Yeah, thank you. I read that study too, and I think I read somewhere about like companies are driven by FOMO, not by strategy these days. So it's very relevant for sure. How about you, Maria? So
yeah, of course. I think, like to your point, I think every team needs a little research experiment within to try AI out to see what sticks and what doesn't. But I think a lot of it is also internal looking. I think you need to have a lot of strong internal conviction and clarity on what you're doing, especially in a world where everything's changing and evolving, and there are many trends that keep coming in and going. Having certainty on what values and goals or targets matter to you helps you understand what tech can be integrated. What I've often noticed is that whatever is cyclically interesting at that time is what ends up being experimented upon instead of looking at what really matters. You can't be everything, so pick what you want to be. And
so I agree with everything that was said, but from my experience, because I did experience firsthand some pilots failing, and the key takeaway for me is I think you should start by defining how you're going to measure success. And I see there's a tendency, because who doesn't like technology, especially the new shiny stuff, we have a tendency to start by looking mostly at the technical KPIs. So I'm going to build this AI application, I'm going to look at the latency, number of concurrent users, and so on. This is good. We have AI observability in place, but I think it's important to take a step back and also think mostly about the business value. What will be the business KPI associated with that? Because then you're going to have the buy-in, and the entire development process is going to evolve around this outcome. So the business outcome, increasing an NPS score, increasing revenue, increasing customer retention. And this is, in my view, what really makes AI stick at a company, and it really sticks to something that is really valuable and makes sense for that company. And it will only grow based on that success.
yeah.
This would be just shift a bit. Not focus. Technical is good, but what was the actual success criteria and the business value here?
Yeah, so have it very clear what success means to a business, the education piece, and starting small. And hopefully we can make AI stick in that way. So thank you very much for all your insights.